Hey everyone, Joe Soto here. Today we're going to talk about how do we solve the Facebook paid ad puzzle. We've got a Facebook ads wizard with us, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. I'll be right back with you.
This is the Not Your Average Joe Show, where each week we bring you sales, marketing, and mindset strategies you need to get to your next level. And now, here's your host, international business mentor, Joe Soto.
We've got Dave Bass in the house. Hey, Dave.
Hey, and my cat in the background.
Yes. What's your cat's name?
That one is Diego for San Diego. And then there's another one that you might hear or see at some point named Tuxie because it looks like she's wearing a tuxedo.
Nice. Nice. Well, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being on here. You're not average, so you're going to fit right in.
I appreciate that. I like to consider myself eccentric.
I had a chance to meet Dave. We both have a mutual person that we associate with. It happens to be one of Dave's clients. And am I allowed to say the name? So
why not?
Yeah, you're one of the ad wizards behind the scenes. You're the media buyer and ads wizard behind John Asraf and his program. We had him on here. We talked about the Brainathon.
Oh, nice.
He spends tens of thousands of dollars on Facebook advertising every single month. That's fair to say. And most recently for his Brainathon launch. And you're really the mastermind behind it. So I'm excited to have you here, Dave. I've been wanting to have, and dare I say the word Facebook ads expert on the show, but you can't find him anywhere. So we both talked about this. Everyone sucks at this, and so then they try to go, I always tell people, you can go and pick up like a book like this.
Oh, Jesus, they sell those.
And good luck, right? Good luck. These guys put out these monster books.
Oh my God.
You cannot learn Facebook advertising from a textbook. I have it. It like this stuff comes to my house like on autopilot. I just go, oh my gosh, there's somebody trying to learn this. I remember when I first was teaching Facebook ads for small businesses in Tai Lopez's course and program in 2016, Dave. And I just taught a few strategies, overarching strategies to list build using Facebook ads, like running contests and giveaways. And people ran crazy with it, but that's like all they knew how to do. It was like once you kind of run out of that, they didn't know what else to do. And it's because it wasn't a Facebook ads course, but you had a lot of dangerous Facebook ads experts running loose. And
they don't often give a lot of caveats, which in my opinion is a lot of the problem. It's not that they're necessarily saying bad stuff. They're just not throwing in the necessary caveats so people don't just go run rampant with their approach or their strategy, not realizing,
that's right.
Hey, if you're in a different price point, different niche, if you're using a different type of, like all these variables that if it's different could completely change what will work and what won't work. And all of a sudden, this strategy that worked for this person that they're teaching about isn't repeatable for other people, and people are scratching their heads wondering why. And the person that created the product often is like, why can't people repeat it? It's because they don't have the experience to know that different situations truly demand different approaches often. That's
right. And so for those people who are getting on here now and joining us, Dave is one of the few people that I've met in recent months and maybe recent years that I genuinely could stand behind and say, he knows his stuff. He knows how to kick ass on Facebook. He's we're going to talk a little bit about specialty of Facebook skill set. I really loved when I met you, how you said, listen, I don't mess with the creative side or copy. And people tend to group Facebook ad experts into just one overall role, when quite honestly, there's different skill sets and different pieces to make it all work. And the most important piece is, how do I market to the right people and make sure that I've got audiences dialed in, because that's where most people go wrong, which is in targeting. But more on that in a minute. So let's give us a little bit of backstory on you. Like, talk to me about, tell everyone like what you do, how you got there, what a little bit of your background, and then we'll just set the stage for some of the discussion topics, because in addition to talking about Dave's entrepreneurial journey, we're going to talk about, for those of you that are consultants or agency owners, a little bit about agency stuff. And then we're going to dive into, in the second part of the show here, that's why you want to stay with us, into some specifics for how can you get some success on Facebook, or what steps should you be taking? All right, over to you, Dave. Give us a little background.
All right. So I spent the first half of my adult life doing information security for companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG Consulting. I had a top secret clearance. I was a very formal security consultant. And then through a strange set of circumstances, I won't go into that story, but a strange set of circumstances, I had a choice between either going back to my formal job or kind of going into this online world. At that point, it was doing affiliate promotions, email list-based affiliate promotions. And I just decided to take a leap of faith, jumped in. I spent the next 6 or 7 years doing email kind of affiliate promotions, helping manage the affiliates, manage kind of the overall promotion. And I learned a lot just about kind of how promotions work, how funnels work, kind of how kind of the people flow and email. Was part of seven-figure promotions during that time period, a bunch of 6-figure ones and 5-figure ones. So varying levels of success. And then with the partner I was working with at the time, we had the Facebook piece of one of our projects. We had hired somebody to do it for us. They didn't seem to be doing a good job. I ended up taking over. The guy I was working with at the time somehow managed to get us an international managed partner rep. So this is a person that worked for Facebook and worked with managed partners, which are much easier to get with international situations than in the US. Requires much smaller kind of situations to get that level of support. Spent the next year and a half kind of working on that one project in the beginning for the first year, and then we kind of picked up another one or two. But every month I met with this woman and just learned a lot. Started testing a lot. At one point, I ended up wanting to learn. It was a high ticket offer, so I wanted to learn kind of lower ticket, lower traffic. So I started doing T-shirt stuff with the guy I was working with, just to kind of learn how to do cheap offers versus $1,000, $2,000 phone leads for $10,000, $25,000 offers. I actually ended up going to the first ever international agency conference in Dublin, Ireland, where I learned some really cool kind of foundational information about how their algorithm works, how the auction works. And then that was probably 5-6 years ago now, maybe 7. Lose track of time sometimes. And then over time, I ended up going to another. Did I go to another partner? No, I ended up leaving that partner and then kind of started working on my own. And then just continuously testing. For me, my fee is based on results. And therefore, if I couldn't figure out how to get something to work, projects didn't last very long. So when you're on the hook for results, and especially when it's very clear, what are you spending? What's coming in? Is there a difference? And if there is a difference, what does that look like? Are you making money, losing money? What is that averaging out over time? You're kind of, your feet are to the fire. You're thrown into the deep end. You have to learn how to either swim or you sink quickly. And that's what I learned how to do. I did a lot of testing. Ironically, I figured out some stuff that's kind of not Facebook traditional recommendations. I know why it's not. It's a lot more work. For me, coming from a background of Big 5 consulting, half an hour to an hour commute each way, 10, 12-hour days, and making a third of what I'm making, I'm willing to put in that work because, again, making triple what I was making back then, I was making good money back then, it's still a lot of work, but different kind of work. It's not the suit and tie. I do it at home. I have 12 computer monitors. So for me, once I kind of figured out, in order to get situations, especially situations that were on the edge, like where other people couldn't get it to work, but I was getting a chance. And if I can get it to work, I got to keep the project. And if not, I didn't, so with a lot of those kind of situations, I was forced to kind of sink or swim, and really based on that, I learned approaches that would squeeze results kind of out of Facebook, again, requiring more hands-on, more regular kind of reviews and adjustments. But for me, it was well worth it because there's a topic that I had potential discussion, but there's different kinds of agencies. I'm a boutique agency. A boutique agency is really like a primary person that runs traffic, maybe a support person or two. And then, that's about it typically. Fewer clients, ideally, bigger, kind of budgets so that you're making more per client. And in those situations, each client becomes very important, but each one can pay you a lot of money, versus if you're a traffic manager working for an agency, you might be managing 10, 15, 20 different clients, and you're still making a fraction of what you're, being charged for that. And the motivation to work extra hard in those situations, I think, is it's lower.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you're making $45,000 a year and you know that what you're generating for some agency is $400,000 a year, you're not going to necessarily work weekends to try to get stuff working or figure stuff out or come up with new tests. For me, well worth that kind of effort. So I've ended up working on a ton of different kinds of funnels. I've come to the conclusion that, especially because I just do traffic, I don't really do the creative side. I've truly come to the conclusion that there's left brain people and right brain. Maybe 1 in 2 to 5 million are actually brilliant people that have both left and right powerful brains.
Right.
But traditionally or typically, most people are either very strong on one side or strong on the other.
Yeah.
That's why I say be wary of any Facebook expert that says they're good at both, because most people don't have very good left and right brains. And the traffic side is very much a left-brained analysis kind of effort versus the creative side, which is very right brain. What's going to move people, what's going to get people interested in this particular offer, in this particular product, in this particular hook, coming up with different angles. That's all, I don't know how creative people pull stuff out of their arse, so to speak, and come up with just random stuff, different angles, different approaches. But I leave that to creative people. So for me, if the creative side isn't what it needs to be to at least get a minimal level of results, I'm dead in the water. So it's the tricky part is I do always have to kind of enter into situations that have that piece of the equation handled either through another agency. I work with one client that has 2 agencies. We actually work well together. It's funny because that other agency is, I'm spending $300,000 to $400,000 a month right now for clients. They spend around $800,000. So they're like double my size. Yeah. Also small, a couple brothers, and I think they have a couple, support staff, and they have a creative team. And
they handle the creative side, and you're handling the other piece.
Well, they also run traffic, but we collaborate. They have a sale recently, and right before I put up a bunch of ads, and I actually shared something with him in case it was helpful for him, and then he pointed out a typo that I wouldn't have noticed, but people definitely would have commented on, and I would have had to go through and change everything, and it would have been both, it would have cost some level of money to have dealt with it, and it would have been extra time. And because I showed him something in case it helped him, he was nice enough to point out something to me. Voila, abundance, where where we're collaborating, we both got helped. He got to, and he asked for do I have the video, because he wanted to pull. It was from the site, and it just prevented him from having to go through and actually pull it down. So that's a collaboration. However, what he says is that almost never happens. Very rarely do you have 2 agencies that are collaborating. Usually they're, they think they're in competition. They think if one does better, they might lose their project. This client is both abundant and gets value from both of us, because again, I don't do creatives. He has a creative team. So I'll go in and cherry pick his best stuff and then run with it. But I can run with it better than they can. So it's a nice win-win where they still get solid results, especially at lower budgets. But I also get a team that tests creatives, and I can just go in, figure out, what's working for them, and then scale that kind of using some of my strategies and approaches. And it's a win-win for everybody.
So this is a really good lesson. This is a great lesson for all different types of people listening to this. So people that are listening who are agencies or consultants and provide digital marketing services and maybe Facebook advertising, which I know some people on here do and are. In that case, it's you need to be, honest about your strengths and say, are my strengths on the right or left brain here, right? Left brain analytical. You almost need to be like a data scientist, and be able to analyze data.
I don't even often look. It's funny, like it's a joke amongst my clients. I don't look at the products I sell. I often don't watch the videos I'm using in ads,
right?
Because I don't need to.
No,
I need to understand the high level concept that they're covering, and then I need to be a data analysis.
That's
what
right.
Works and what doesn't work.
That's right.
And I've in the past I did care a little bit more, and I would be like, okay, I wonder what I think this will work. I'm pretty sure this won't work, but you're wrong enough times, and you just stop guessing.
Yeah. Your zone of genius is in dialing in these audiences and analyzing the data, and then dialing in the audiences from analyzing the data.
And just ongoing process.
That's right.
Like,
and then
it's not Google where you just, once you figure it out, there's very little hands-on work, and just for the most part continues to produce.
And for entrepreneurs that are on here, and there's a few people on here that own different types of companies and businesses that are trying to figure out, do I hire an ad agency? Do I hire somebody to do Facebook advertising? Is there any such thing as one person who's just a Facebook ads expert? Be wary, because what Dave's pointing out is, you need someone who could do the media buying, who is the analytical left brain data engineer, and then you've got to have, and who can dial in those audiences and getting all that stuff set up. That's the technical piece of Facebook that so many people struggle with, who are right brain. And so the right brain person's going, well, I'm really good with copy and creative. I like making images, and I like doing video and telling stories and doing the storytelling through my videos and all this. And then they struggle. I hear this all the time. People come to me and they'll be like, yo, I'm really good at doing ads, but I'm really bad at getting them to work. And I'm like, wait a minute, you can't be good at both. It's like, well, I'm good with the creative and the copy, but I don't think I'm targeting the right audience, which is always the case when that's the case. So I'm like, okay, so you don't know how to get conversion and to get your ads to work, because you don't know how to analyze the data, or even how to set it up correctly to be able to analyze it the way you want to. And you're really living over here in right brain world because it appeals to you. This is the challenge with training and educating agency owners who want to do it all, who want to be boutique. You're saying, no, you can be a boutique and live on one side. Cassandra says, I'm a lefty, right? So you can live on, I'll just maximize my strengths of left brain, but I need to find someone, or you need to hire or delegate, outsource to somebody who does have the experience to bring in that copy and creative. So in the team that you work with for one of your clients, John Asraf, who was on my show, we talked about the Brainathon on the show a couple weeks ago even. He has a full-time copywriter. He has a creative team and staff who can work on the imagery and stuff. And then you're just doing left brain stuff. So you're working right in your zone of genius. And that makes for an ideal situation for you. Yes.
That's right.
And more importantly, it makes for an ideal situation for the client.
Right. Because what they're not dealing with is a team who doesn't know their brand, doesn't know their audience, trying to come up with ads using like tricks almost, various, again, trickery to try to get people interested. But that's not really what a business wants. A business wants ads that are congruent, that understand the audience, understand where their pain points are, understand the kind of things they want, and that's typically internal. It's very hard to have a third party come in, really understand that, and create something that's going to work for those people. That's why a lot of times when you hear these people come in and create ads, they just never work. Of course they don't work. They're just learning about this brand for the first time today, and they're supposed to try to create ads for tomorrow. It's
Yeah.
Unless you're doing, so what I've done in the past, is swipe from landing pages, because I used to do a lot of email as a left brain person. I got good at swiping copy, right? Taking good bits of copy, maybe tweaking it a little bit, and then leveraging that for whatever my purpose was.
Yeah.
So one of my clients had a recent sale. They had a landing page for this sale, and I wanted to get some ads up before I had any help. I just went to the landing pages, pretty much swiped, 2 areas of copy, pulled the video down, because you can download videos easily these days, either from YouTube or even Facebook using third-party apps for free. And voila, I had my ads that worked reasonably well because I was pulling from copy that was generated by copywriters that know the brand. It was a landing page for a sale created by the business. So,
but you could swipe that stuff. It's not as easy to swipe your side. People can't. People can't see the engine behind Facebook that's targeting. That's if it's working. If you're trying to model a successful ad, this is also a really important point. I'm going to dumb it down for everyone. If you're trying to model a successful ad, okay, this is the part you can model or swipe, which is the copy and some of the creative. If you know that it's been proven to work, and there's a lot of ways to gauge that. Even as an outsider, you can simply go to the Facebook ads library and see which ads have been running over any period of time. Most people won't keep spending money on ads unless they're completely dumb and just want to waste money, or maybe they're Coca-Cola with an unlimited ad budget. But most people if they're running the same ad over and over, it's because it's converting. But you cannot do that when you can't see behind the scenes who's the real audience that they're targeting and what are some of the things that they're setting up on the back end that's making these ads convert so well, which tends to be they're marketing to the right people and they've got that dialed in. So what do you say to someone who says, well, so what's the solution to that? How do I hire a media buyer, or how do I find the person? If I'm right and I have some good creative, or I think I can find that, or I have that skill, whether I'm a client or entrepreneur or a digital marketing person, how do I find the media buyer? Because I don't, it's, not going to put an ad in the paper for a digital data scientist. And I want to just say, I was at the War Room Mastermind that digital marketers owners put on in Austin, Texas a week ago. And a guy got up there and spoke. His name's escaping me, but he basically said the future of marketing are these data scientists, these left brain analyticals, people like you, Dave, who know how to analyze the data for companies and businesses. And he said, you should spend your money on having this type of person in your organization, particularly if you're big enough to hire this person. Otherwise, you're going to have to outsource and get this type of person in your company.
There's a tremendous amount of opportunity cost that gets lost if you don't really understand kind of what's working, what's not working, how to kind of piggyback and leverage what is working, how to avoid the type of things that aren't working, even how to test for the various types of things that, kind of have categories of working and not working. That's that. A lot of agencies have a modicum of success because they're what I consider creative centric. So what they do is they find the most obvious, congruent audiences. They build enough creatives to find something that works to these obvious, very congruent audiences. Yeah. And then once every week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they're constantly changing the creatives.
That's right.
And they just keep going to the same audiences and changing the creatives. I figured out, or at least I believed a long time ago, that once I find creatives that can get the job done, I think it's easier to find more and more groups of people to show it to versus trying to find yet another creative that engages people, gets them interested enough, gets them to click at a ratio that you need to get the traffic that you need, to get the conversion level you need, to get the cost per purchase that you need to balance out against the spend that you started with in order to make it sensible for you to make that or to do that spend.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there because that is brilliant. And it's normal for you. You take this for granted, what you just said, but Again, I want to call out what Dave's saying here. And I think you kind of say, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, meaning keep your best stuff up. Don't just replace it. This is what part of what you're talking about here. I love this. This is just some notes that Dave and I had made prior to the show that I'm going to comment on, because what Dave just explained is, and he's absolutely right, that, and for certain types of industries and businesses, like for a restaurant, they have to change creative because they're introducing new food and stuff like this all the time. Although we would, when we used to focus on restaurants, which was 2014 to 2016, about a 2-year period, we helped close to 100 restaurants during that time. I would still, once we found a creative that worked, we would rinse and repeat it. It's just we would have to swap stuff out because it's food and you're trying to constantly.
And do that with ads too.
Yeah.
Where you kind of crop, what's it called? Crop rotate, where you rotate crops in order to, save the soil and to, let the soil kind of recover. Yep. And then, 2 or 3 cycles later, that soil is primed for growth again. A lot of times ads can work that way also. That's
right. But you're saying something I think is as important or more, which is, make sure if you're analyzing the data right, and you're always looking to test other groups, you could get the higher converting copy and creative in front of, which requires people not be lazy and takes more work.
A lot more work.
A lot more work. But go to these agencies, they don't want to have to do that work. But you're gonna tell me you'll probably get more, not just better results, but you'll retain people, you'll retain your clients longer.
Of course, because those situations rely on easy converting offers that do have large generic kind of audiences they can go to, and they can just change the creatives every 1, 2, 3 weeks and get enough results that they're at least profitable, right? It's still worth it for the client. Sometimes it's break even, but they're building a customer base. That's lifetime value. And to them, that's free customers.
Yeah.
There's some situations where people pay money for customers for the lifetime value. They'll go negative to get a customer. So if you're breaking even on a customer, even if they're not making profit day one, that's still a worthwhile endeavor because they don't have another option.
Yeah.
There is no here, make a lot of profit or break even. For them, it's just most agencies can help them break even because they can create creatives. They can come up with obvious audiences based on what makes sense. That's one of the things I've learned is there are these obvious audiences that, if you have a shoe client going after footwear,
right.
They also sell sandals going after flip-flops and sandals, shoes, sneakers, Adidas, Nike, if they're running shoes, running, marathon, those are not hard. You know what I mean? And if you test those and see if they work, they could become, and a lot of them are large. So you can just do that nice strategy where you just constantly create new creatives and try to squeeze that one audience as much as you can. And that's how you get results. And if you're managing 25 clients, it's much easier putting up $200-$300, $400 or $500 budgets than it is, a bunch of smaller budgets to a bunch of kind of different segments. However, if you're willing to, think through what kind of people are my customers. So a great example of that, I have a client that sells an information product on how to balance hormones, right? It's for women, balancing their hormones. And a great audience, one that often works as good, if not better, than hormone imbalance. The most congruent audience you can come up with is aromatherapy.
Wow.
What does aromatherapy have to do with balancing your hormones? Nothing at all. But the kind of women that are interested in aromatherapy are the same kind of women that are interested in an information product on hormone balance. They're kind of, they like that kind of more, I don't want to say woo woo, but that kind of more, metaphysical type mindset. And it's that kind of person that would be interested in an information product versus going to a doctor, and getting, the first stop is, medical advice before ever an information product, medical advice. A lot of people who are interested in aromatherapy are not those very hard, kind of conservative people. So yeah, that's just an example of what I consider like an indirect audience, but thinking through, like for the shoe situation, camping, people that go camping need comfortable shoes, different professions, doctors, teachers need comfortable shoes. Nothing to do with shoes, but these are people that might be interested in your product. So it's a different kind of way of approaching it. But again, to create 20 to 40 campaigns with different kind of audiences versus 4 to 6 or 8 campaigns is a lot more work and takes a lot more thought. And then you got to see what's working and what's not working, and constantly kind of be filtering out what's not, putting new things up that, to test, trying to figure out of what's working. Why is it working? What about it can I leverage? If it's an audience or an interest, is there like a lot of times when I'm testing interest, and this is a good kind of segue into some strategies for that. But when I'm testing an interest, I'll start off at kind of high level topic areas. And then if like what I consider like the most obvious congruent large audiences in these areas, like Paleolithic diet, 12 million person audience. If that works, there's 5, 10, 15 different paleo type audiences. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to test the smaller, kind of more focused on paleo audiences, because the higher level, kind of concept didn't. So I'll test kind of high level areas. And then if those work, then I can start digging down into those areas. When camping started work, like when water sports started working for my shoe client, I went crazy. Kite surfing, paddle boarding, all these different like water sports, because surfing worked. You know what I mean? Like this, surfing is the most kind of is a more accepted kind of generic thing. But once surfing and like beaches worked, all kinds of different, interests opened up to me that I could start testing. So that's one of the ways that I'll kind of.
So really important that people hear this part. The part that takes more work is because it contradicts the mistake I see so many people making when clients sometimes will have me look at their ads, or I get asked a lot to review ads. When we were doing our little project with John,
that's how we met.
Yeah, it's how we met. John knew he had wizards working with him. You guys were all really good. Matt, you and Alan and everybody on that team. But so often I see what you could expect that I see, and that you probably see when you take on new clients, is they're so lazy that they'll interest stuff to make one big audience.
I don't want to make judgment. Maybe they're just ignorant.
They're just ignorant. And I always say people do the best they can with the resources and knowledge that they have. So sometimes it's just, I'll just create one audience set and I'll stuff 30 interests in there, and that'll be my audience, versus, wait a minute, what if that really should be 30 different audience sets that you test to see which ones pull. And then you could stuff a few together maybe, but at the end of the day, you could talk to an audience even differently. A copy changes and shifts for different audiences and different brands or different interests, which also encourage you to keep them apart. But you're talking about a lot of work that people aren't typically willing to do. And I would say that if you want to be in business for a great amount of time, if you're an agency owner or a digital marketer and you want to see real results for clients, then put in this work. Let them know what type of work is going into it so they can appreciate your fees that go along with it.
That right there. The same way you pointed out something to me earlier, I'm going to point out something that you just said that's critical. Like communicating with the client, what's involved, figuring out what level of detail they're interested in, making sure what you don't want to do is overwhelm a high level business owner who all they want is high level information with, in the details. But there are clients that are, would be interested. They're not going to learn what you're doing and want to do it themselves, but are at the high level interested in what you're doing and what it takes and kind of what your approach is. And versus some agencies might be like want to hide what they're doing and it's my secret. It's my secret sauce. I can't let anyone see it. for me, I'm always happy to show what I'm doing because it is a lot of work and analysis and perspective. And I've had people try to take over accounts I was running. They thought they could do it for cheaper. And it always fails because you can't just look at what's been done and then somehow rinse, wash, and repeat it. You can rinse, wash, and repeat the high level approach, but the actual execution piece, like it's funny, like I'll often say I never know what I'm going to do next in a given situation, but I have, a tool chest of a bunch of different strategies I can pull out that I've, tested and I know can work in situations. And then especially once I've been with the client for a little while, I start figuring out which of those kind of approaches
work for them,
work more, and which ones don't. And therefore, now I have 8 different ways of creating batches that, have varying levels of likelihood of success. Like when you're first testing a brand new audience or brand new creative, that has a lower kind of level likelihood of success, right? Because it's unproven.
Yeah.
But if you're taking a proven creative with a proven audience that just hasn't seen that proven creative, and you combine them, right? So now you're going to a proven audience, the proven creative that you just haven't actually had that match before. Well, the likelihood of that working is much higher because you've seen that audience work with other creatives. You've seen that creative work with other audiences.
Yep.
Now, what a great way to piggyback, especially if you have different creatives that you've been testing, and maybe some creatives work with some audiences and some with other audiences, because that's and it's a little frustrating. If you put up 10 of the same things, right? 6 or 7 are going to do around the same. 1 or 2 are going to be lower anomalies in results. And then 1 or 2 are going to be upper anomalies, right? So you have to be careful of just testing something once and assuming that because it didn't work, it's 100%, can't work. Because maybe you hit one of those one times that was the random time where the variables, the stars just weren't aligned. The algorithm wasn't in the zone that day. There's more technical things to what that actually means. But at the high level, that concept, that you got to be careful of judging things based on kind of single tests. So that's another piece. Yeah.
This is why I tell clients, you got to be patient while all this gets dialed in for these campaigns. But if you are, that analytical work that you're doing will pay off. So when you're, I see a lot of
knowing when not to chase good money with bad money. So at some point, okay, like all the work in the world is probably not going to get this thing from, 50% negative, loss to 150% positive profit. And that's your target, right? Without something major changing, that's a hard kind of leap just from traffic.
Yeah.
So recognizing after you've tested enough that it was good money to test, but now we get to do some kind of change before we keep spending money, because now we're chasing good money with bad money. And it's so critical. Like the good money is well spent money to figure, because when you do figure out things that work, you can run with them, right? It's now a slot machine that for a while you put 50 cents in, it's spitting out 75 cents to $1 to $1.50 every single friggin' day. Maybe one day or two it doesn't, right? But the amount you put in compared to what comes out is a little bit negative, and the other 10 days out of the last 12 are all medium to high positive, right? And then but that's what you're looking for, right? So that's the goal, is to find these situations that are producing your results within your target range, whatever your target range is. It very, like, what my biggest client has a 2.7 ROI bare minimum. If I don't hit that, I'm pretty much fired, right? There was a third party that came into the situation recently.
Yeah. And
they were trying to sell their services on creatives, right? They're amazing at creating creatives. And I'm like, well, what do you expect when you're testing? What are you looking for in results? He's like, well, like 1.7, 1.5. And I'm like, dude, you have to understand, like we have a 2.7 minimum across all traffic, testing traffic. There's the retargeting, which is this idea of going back to people that have hit your site because they're a little warmer. So that might be a little higher than your average, but all your testing stuff, if you test at too high of a ratio and you spend too much and lose it, all of a sudden your overall ROI and all your spend, if you're a big business,
it's skewed. Yeah.
If you set aside budget in order to purely test with, and if you lose it, so be it. You know what I mean? Great, because that's what this guy had worked with. He's like, what? There's no testing budget? Like sure, there's testing budget. It's your budget.
Yeah.
Included in your budget, you got to figure out
make it work. Yeah.
Yeah. So he all of a sudden started backtracking a lot as far as what he could do for this situation, because he had never seen a situation with that high of a ROI requirement.
Because he was good at his piece of it, and some of it was out of control. And also, a lot of people, when they're testing, they tend to test more than one thing at a time. And I get this a lot too. They'll be like, here's the 2 ads we're testing. And they have different copy, different creative, and different audiences. I'm like, what are you testing? I see that. There's somebody watch this who's like, what's wrong with that? I'm testing 2 different ads altogether to see which one does better. Tell them what's wrong with that.
If you test one ad that otherwise would work with an audience that's not going to work, then that's not going to be successful. And if you test an ad that's so with a great audience, that's going to work, and that's going to look amazing, but that's only going to work with the good audiences. Yeah. And Facebook might say that you're competing against yourself, right? So to that I say, maybe I am, but I'm still able to get much better results than your typical recommendations of bigger budgets, get 50 conversions per week per ad set. And it's funny too, because a lot of the recommendations I've come to believe are based on much bigger daily budgets than the average bear. $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 a day, right? When you have to spend that kind of money, well, maybe you do have to find ways of chunking it up and kind of doing stuff in bigger bulk, but that's not most businesses. Most businesses are trying to start off with $300 to $500 a day. If that works, then they'll scale up to $1,000. If that works, then they'll, it's a slow kind of scaling process. And the problem is that if the recommendations that Facebook's giving is designed for bigger advertisers, and I'm guessing, a lot of the people that are listening to you are smaller, medium businesses. Even if they're doing well, $1, $2, $3, $5 million a year, they still don't have, $20,000, $30,000 a day to advertise with, hoping it's going to work. Right. A couple of days of loss, and that's a lot of freaking money to most businesses.
Yeah.
So that's another piece of the equation, I think.
That's what stops a lot of the small to medium-sized business owners from advertising or stepping into the waters. Other things is they're trying to figure out the targeting and audience piece of it. So Eric has a question. He says, with all the info that Facebook has, I can't seem to find a way to target independent pizza operators.
And that's the topic of, what kind of people are these? Are these entrepreneurs? If they are, Success Magazine, entrepreneurship, small business owner, obviously these aren't just pizza owners, but here's the concept. If your ad is specific, right? I'm calling out pizza owners who are interested in the best pizza owner deal ever. Yeah. Right. So the ad for pizza owners, it's clear that this thing is amazing, what he's offering. They're going to want it when they see it. His problem in his mind is, but I don't know where to find them. I know how to talk to them. I know how to tell them, I got the bet. For them, I got the stuff. I got the magic right here to make their lives better. So the key is, it's funny too, that the highest ROI traffic I've ever dealt with was the highest link click cost traffic I ever dealt with. Highest link click cost, highest ROI. Right? Wasn't cheap clicks got me the best, return on my investment. Right. It was the highest expensive traffic. And the reason was, it was for life coaching. The ad was very clear. If you're interested in a second career as a life coach, most people aren't interested in a second career as a life coach. but if you are, right, again, if you are, small percentage,
calling it out,
right? That's not, we had like an 80-90% opt-in rate on our opt-in page for that.
Because the people who are looking for that are so targeted that they're going to convert.
And we didn't.
It's just going to cost you more to find those inside of that broader audience.
But that's how you find them, and again, highest ROI.
Yeah.
So it's not like because
Brilliant.
I had to find them in these bigger audiences, I couldn't make money on them, because these people are valuable enough to me that I could afford to go to 1,000 people, 5,000 impressions to find my pizza owner, especially if my ad is clear, So that's
a really important point. There's going to be people who will need to rewind that.
It's so key. Well, and here's the other thing. Like, I've heard people, I had a client that was so mistrustful of list building from Facebook. They've heard so many nightmares that the lists you build on Facebook are just crap. They won't buy anything, right? Common idea. And the response is, well, yes, if they're built the wrong way, of course they're going to be crap, right? But if you know how to filter for the kind of people you're looking for, right? People in the US, maybe people in top tier countries. I have a list of about 70 or 80 crap countries. So I'll sometimes go worldwide, but exclude
the crap countries,
70, 80 crap countries, and exclude the US, which just gets me international because US tends to be more expensive.
Yep.
Right. So that's one of my little strategies. I'll break up, an audience to a US and an international, like US only traffic, international only traffic. And therefore it's, and I could see which, if either, sometimes both of them will work, sometimes the US, sometimes if it was always one or the other, in situations, obviously, where you can go international, not all situations are, but when you can, if it was always international worked better, then I would start with international and test US. There are situations where I test with the US, and when US works, I'll then test an international only version.
Yeah.
But, because the international is harder to get working, I want to make sure it works in the US first before I go to international.
Yeah.
Another traffic trick.
Cheaper doesn't mean better.
Cheaper so does not mean better. Often does not mean better. So that's, and that's another thing that most people don't realize is that based on your price point can drastically vary your traffic approach, because your traffic approach can filter for kind of higher quality based on what you're doing and more expensive people, but higher value. Or if you're selling a $27 info offer, you don't need expensive, high-end people with high salaries. If you're selling a mechanics offer, you're looking for mechanics. You don't want to filter for, these very kind of this expensive traffic that is known high quality, because you don't need it and you're just going to waste a lot of money.
Yeah.
But if you are selling $1,000, $2,000 offer, you better know how to go after higher quality people, because if you don't, again, you're going to be stuck with, building a situation that doesn't work for you because you built it the wrong way. Same way people that have like free giveaways, they don't realize that the problem with the free giveaway, especially if it's advertised purely as a free giveaway, is that you get a lot of freebie seekers, and you could build a list of freebie seekers that don't buy anything.
Yeah.
Right. Versus if you try to bring them in with something else, and then once they get there, you have some kind of free giveaway. So you leverage the idea of this free thing and kind of what you can kind of build momentum from it or get virality out of it. But you first hook them in to more your main idea, your main topic. So that's the kind of people that first click, right? So they're not freebie, they're interested in your topic. And then you can hit them with you can kind of leverage the benefit of that strategy without killing you on the traffic, right? The strategy isn't bad, but if you don't filter first for the right kind of people, that strategy can waste you a bunch. I've seen it waste a bunch of money.
Super important point, which is you're doing the homework on, and I've had this come up a lot where they go, no, we'll do the giveaway and we'll do it for everyone. And I'll say, no. Then you will attract and pull all these freebie seekers who will never buy or come in or do whatever. And so being hyper targeted on those freebies. Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. And you literally end up with a big list that makes you no money.
Yep.
And then you'll add to the whole fervor of Facebook lists suck.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny, like sometimes how you optimize. So this client once didn't believe me that even though we optimized for a purchase and the lead cost was twice as expensive as when we optimized for a lead, it was still better.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's better. They didn't want to believe it. And at the end of the day, I'm their consultant. As long as I've said my piece, right, and I'm not going to be fired if it doesn't work by testing it the way you want me to, I'll follow any marching orders you give me. It's your money.
Yeah.
You know, I'm your servant. So I optimized for a lead, and sure enough, leads doubled. Cost per sale went up, right, not down. And the list they built, they were so annoyed at how little it was buying compared to the smaller list they had built for the prior month and a half when they were doing it the way I told them to do it. Right. So they
thought more was more.
And they asked me then, please never optimize for a lead again. And I said, no problem. Yeah. And that doesn't always mean optimizing for a lead is worse. But in that situation, I just knew it was going to be. Usually it is. Yeah, even though you get twice as many leads. So you have to be real careful. Now, in a situation where you're selling a $2,000 offer, so there's so few purchases, that's trickier. Sometimes you do have to optimize for lead because there's too few of the final conversion that Facebook can't really optimize. So again, caveats. That's the reason I don't really teach this stuff, because I like 3/4 of my course would be caveats. Like, this works, but in this, except for this,
not in this situation, not with these type of audiences or industries. But what that does is speaks volumes around how important experience plays in your ultimate success in this type of role. And for anyone, who goes, I want to buy a Facebook ads course out of a box. This is why I've always resisted the invitation, the pressure to create a Facebook ads course and program, is because when I taught pieces of how to do it in Tai Lopez's program, my real strength and what I'm passionate about teaching is how to find clients. That was a side thing that I knew how to do because I had experience as the boutique running the ads myself and leaning on other people who could do the other pieces that I was weak in. But when you teach it, I immediately ran that risk of people go, oh, you should do a whole course on just that. I'm like, no, because what I can't transfer over to you is my brain and experience
and perspective.
And my perspective. Yeah. And that's what's so difficult about trying to, learn it out of a textbook is
anything that is valuable out of a textbook, you can learn for free. Like,
right.
What the options are.
Right.
What the basic setup is. Right. If your goal is to, you just want to focus on the most, congruent audiences you can think of, your shoe client, sneaker, footwear. Yep. You're small. You don't want to go crazy with this. You just want to, you realize it's not as good. Right. Then you can, have bigger budgets, more congruent audiences, and you just constantly think of new creatives and hope they work. When they don't work, turn them off quicker. And when they do work, leave them up longer.
So let's talk about another thing that we had talked about before and that we both see pretty eye to eye on, which is, this will lead into that. Dan Kennedy, who I love, has been around a long time. Brilliant. Yeah. He writes, he says there's 9 marketing and advertising mistakes. And I printed this out, so I had them in front of him. Number 1 is marketing to the wrong people, which is where Dave comes in and what he's been talking about here. Dan's saying that's the number 1 mistake. It isn't creative. Somebody asked above, what's more important, the creative or copy? And the answer is neither. The answer is that is important.
Let me throw out a real quick concept here. Okay, in my mind,
what's important is the people, and then I would say I'd go into this. Go ahead.
In my mind, with time and budget, very rarely is there a better creative. What there is creatives that can get you results in your target range with the right audiences.
Right.
and creatives that won't get you in your target range with the right audiences. Now, you might have to go to 10 of the right audiences, and maybe only 4 of them will work in order for you to determine that this creative is viable. And if you do a creative that isn't going to work and you send it to 10 audiences, maybe you get zero conversions or 1, and that helps you identify that's not viable.
Yeah.
But the one that appears better, right? Let's say you have 2 creatives that are getting you results in your target range, and this one seems better. You spend enough money and time, next month, the other one's better. The month after, the one that was in 3rd place, it's now better. It wasn't there was a better, it was they each had a range of results. Randomly each month they hit a certain point in that range.
So smart.
And that's what appears to be better at that particular moment in time. But you don't typically see, now on rare occasion, and there's exceptions to almost every rule. So anyone that comes out and says, oh no, I found a creative that just, I craze at work, but this one is hands and toes above the rest. Exceptions to everything. But at the high level, the more I've tested and spent money on, the more I've come to the conclusion. Now, again, it's not always easy to find creatives that can get you results in your target range. So I'm not saying that this is an easy concept.
Yeah.
What I am saying is trying to fight for the best wording, right? I'm going to word it this way, or I'm going to move this one word here, and I'm going to, and I'm going to do that, like 4 different versions of this one thing. And I'm going to spend a bunch of money to figure out which version's the best. It's just a waste of money. Like, think whatever you think is the best, use that and test it against something that's holistically different, comes at it with a different approach, right? A different kind of personality type, versus the kind of person that needs logic, come at it from an emotional perspective. That's, to me, when you're testing creatives, what you want to more focus on with your testing is different ideas, high-level ideas, approaches, recognizing people have different, they want to learn, or they're influenced by different things. Some people are influenced by shorter, more concise information. Some people want longer, detailed information, right? So you can go to the same audience with 3 different creatives and get better results than going to that same audience with 1 creative and spending 3 times as much, especially if those 3 creatives are very different, but still all good, right? Still have all the good image, still have good congruent copy.
Great point.
Because what you're doing is you're actually accessing 3 different sub-segments of that audience, and you're spending less on these more kind of targeted people. And what you're not doing is tripling up on just the one kind of person. You can exhaust that one kind of person quicker, right? That's why I have campaigns that will last for weeks and sometimes months and not die, is because I have little pieces, and I'm literally just kind of I'm going after this one kind of subset within this audience with that particular piece, and then I'll have another creative going to that same audience. What I'm not doing is I'm not burning out that audience of just, if I have my best creative and that's the only one I use is one that like focuses on emotion because it's a really good emotional creative, I'm going to burn out the people that are convinced by emotion, somewhat quickly a lot of times, versus if I go after the logical people in that audience, whatever the different personality types are, if you do that, you could have spent that same total money and gotten better results because you split that money up. Again, that's kind of another way I squeeze results out of situations. I've recognized that there's ways to kind of break up your spend, and based on that, end up in a more efficient situation than just trying to kind of, bull in a china shop it, so to speak, kind of just bull rush it. And that's what a lot of people do. They have something that works and they just increase the budget. This works, I'm gonna spend a lot more money, and then they're surprised when the results tank. And they're like, oh, Facebook sucks. Anytime that something's working and I increase my budget, my results tank. And they can't understand why. And then they say Facebook sucks and you can't really spend money on Facebook, and that's because they don't understand that if you try to ask Facebook to spend 10 times as much money in the same group, you're forcing them to go to a less qualified person. Right? If you ask them to spend $1 per hour on an audience, they can spend their sweet time finding the right people. You ask them to spend $10 an hour.
Brilliant.
And now they have to go to less congruent people. You're forcing them by asking them to spend that much, on that one group of people.
So good.
That's why I constantly try to kind of spread it out more. So I'm kind of never stressing any one situation too much. And then if one or two things die, no problem. I have a chunk more that are still working. You know what I mean? Because those one or two things that are died are small pieces. And if I have 20 pieces that are working, now I lose one or two, I look to replace those. But if you have 3 or 4 and you lose one, that's like 25% of your overall situation you can lose overnight. That's not fun.
This is really valuable, and that's gold for anyone who was listening. And there's another piece. I know we're running out of time, but I want to talk a little bit about this. Another mistake Dan says people make is not using direct response advertising.
Interesting.
And this plays along the lines of you and I were talking a little bit about this when we first met, which is, do you spend all this money on awareness and then retarget the awareness and engagement later on? And the answer was, yeah, if you got the ad budget of Coca-Cola, right? Otherwise, direct response advertising needs to be your mantra, because awareness advertising will empty your pockets
so quickly.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that, because I know people get caught up in, well, businesses need to build their awareness on Facebook first. And I get
my Facebook teachers love talking about strategies like this because they have to constantly come up with new strategies. They're teachers and they're trying to stay current with new stuff.
Yeah.
That's one of the things you got to be careful of with information teachers like that, is they're incentivized to come up with new stuff all the time, even if the new stuff's not better than the old stuff.
Yeah. I've got someone just asked me this the other day. They said, Joe, let's talk about, optimizing for video views and then retargeting the video views. And I said, I'm actually testing that, and I'm not getting quality leads from that. So it is great in theory.
That's when you start getting the same results from the resultant audience as you do with any of the other proven good audiences you had. Like if you had proven audiences from a different strategy and an earlier approach, and you go to those cold traffic audiences that work, and you go against these warmed up audiences, and you see the same results. The only difference is you spent 20% more.
Yeah, for no reason. When you could have just went direct to opt-in, and as long as the audience was dialed in, copy was decent, creative was decent. It doesn't need to be. What doesn't need to be great is copy and creative. What does need to be great is
landing page.
So yes, the landing page. There's all those pieces, but your audience has to be great. And dialed in.
They have to work.
They have to work. They have to be
great. Is a very tough thing to define.
Yeah.
They have to work. And the way you find things that work is you come up with ideas that might work.
Yeah.
And you test, and you get good at figuring out, okay, other things that work and keep working, how long did it take for them to get their first sale and their first conversion? Right? What's the longest it took for something that ended up working for a longer time period? What's the longest it took to get its first sale? Once you start kind of working on a situation and getting a feel for what you're dealing with, you can say, well, if this doesn't get a sale in the first 2 days, the likelihood of it being a winner drops considerably.
Yeah.
Right. So your test kind of period is 2 days. And if you leave it up for longer, you're now irresponsible, chasing good money with bad money. Because you knew the likelihood of it working past day 2. If it didn't see action in the first 2 days, drops. Now if a third to a half of your stuff gets results on that second day, what you don't want to do is after the first day, if things don't get results, pause everything that didn't get results that first day.
Right.
Because you do know it might take the first or the second day for your winners to get their first sale. But when 90% of your winners all get their sale in a certain time period, you don't have to. This is not a statistics class.
Right. You have data.
Statistical significance.
Yeah, you have plenty of data already.
You need likelihood, right? And that's what a lot of people don't understand, especially like the Facebook. And it's funny too. Sometimes Facebook's testing goes the opposite, where it makes its assumptions way too early, right? So if you're testing multiple ad sets in a campaign, Facebook will throttle traffic based on audience size, right? So if you have an audience that's a third, like 2 million, and you have a 10 million person audience, ad set in that campaign, that 2 million person audience isn't going to get a fair amount of budget tested.
Yeah.
So it's making these adjustments too quickly. So there's sometimes where it's not taking long enough, and sometimes it's taking too long, and wasting money. That's why once you get a feel for reality, you don't have to rely on Facebook, to kind of manage that for you. You can start doing it yourself.
Good.
So I did the split test where, and this is like a great anecdote for, there's no such thing as necessarily better. There's just will and won't work.
Yeah.
I did a split test where I had, I think, 12 different audiences, and I put 2 different creatives on each audience, right?
Yeah.
So I had 2 campaigns for each audience. One campaign had one creative, one campaign had another creative, same audience, 12 instances of that. And I shit you not, it was almost 50-50 as far as these 6, one did better, and Facebook said, this one's better. And then these 6, it might have been 5 and 7, but it was pretty close.
Yeah.
Facebook literally said, this one's better, and it was the other one. I'm like, which one's better? And when you see that, you start realizing there is no better. There's just, they both work. And now they're both
different. Yeah. They're just different.
Can work.
So a couple questions we'll take, and then we'll wrap up. We've gone a little long, but this is such an important discussion. This is such an important discussion. So thoughts on LinkedIn ads versus Facebook. Have you ever played around with LinkedIn ads at all?
I haven't. And this was a topic, when it comes to an agency, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a one traffic agency? Do you want to have expertise in multiple ones? I haven't seen anyone that is really good in multiple traffic sources. They say they are, again, red flag, if not yellow flag.
That's right.
Like someone that says,
I've never met someone who's really good at Facebook ads and YouTube.
It's a different mindset. The algorithm is actually fundamentally different on Facebook versus algorithm. I learned that in Dublin during that agency conference, that the actual algorithms, one of them is like a painting auction, right? I bid 100, you bid 200, I bid 3, you say too much, I pay 3.
Yeah.
Facebook is a not virtual, it's a theoretical auction. You bid 100, I bid 2, you bid 3, I say too much, you pay 187 because Facebook already determined the cost of that painting was 187. They wanted to see who wanted it more.
Wow. Great.
And based on that, it's a totally, like, in one situation, we could have a war and drive up our price.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm a big advertiser, I can screw you over. I can always just bid more than you, and you're going to lose every time. On Facebook, they've made it a fairer playing field. They've determined the price of inventory. You can sort of adjust your cost. If your ads are better or worse, you might see a little better cost. But at the foundational level, the cost of that inventory, Facebook has determined ahead of time. And that means that no matter how big of an advertiser you are, I can compete with you knowing that I could just bid. I can manually bid higher and I'll get traffic. And I won't pay that much more. Right? But that's because I know enough that I know that no big advertiser can blow me out and cost me 10 times my cost, like on Google. So back to full circle, fundamentally different approaches, different algorithm, different auction. So now if you're an agency that has a Google expert, a Facebook expert, a LinkedIn expert, that's fine. But chances are they're different people. They've each had experience in that one platform. They can speak to having 5 or 10 or 15 different clients with different niches and different funnels. And, that's what it takes. Like anyone can learn one situation and eventually figure it out. Right.
And I would say, you can get results on all these platforms. Facebook still has been regarded as one of the cheaper ones to get traffic on if you've got it figured out. But
you can filter better.
Because you can filter better. And
And
LinkedIn's trying to play catch up, and they're still way behind. So Tevin says, why do you need 12 computer screens? Because we see your background, we don't see your foreground, which is 12. You said you have 12 computer monitors. I know.
go to Facebook.
I've seen a picture, and it's like you're mission control there.
If you go to facebook.com/dbass, first initial last name, and you look at the top image, you'll see my setup. And it's funny, I could use 15, but I don't want to be gluttonous, even though 12 might seem gluttonous. I have a Skype screen. I have a Slack screen. I have a Gmail screen. I have an Outlook screen. I have an ad manager screen. I have a dashboard screen of the different shopping carts and places I can see financial results. I have a screen where I'm usually watching content in the background, be that UFC Fight Pass or a movie or, Joe Rogan's podcast, just kind of listening to it while I'm doing stuff. I have a screen for my calendar. I pretty much have something on each screen. And then I have, one or two that I usually have as working screens that I can actually be doing stuff on, so I'll move stuff from one of its primary locations to my work screen. And then I'm done with it. It goes back into the ad manager screen. And I'll pull a different ad manager tab out and work on that one. So yeah, once you start it's funny. I once lost a video card and I had to go back down to 9. And I did feel like an asshole for feeling this way. But I was like, man, this sucks. I missed my 3 screens because they had their purposes. Now I had to double up on purposes on screens I had. So to answer your question, over time, I kept finding different purposes for different screens. And as I grew my agency, and started having more clients and making a little more money, I could afford to eventually get a liquid cooled $4,000 or $5,000 triple video card, 12 monitor setup. Because to me, if it makes me more efficient and effective, that's it pays for itself. To me, my system pays for itself from efficiency and kind of effectiveness. And I have OCD. So talk about therapeutic.
I love it. Dave, this has been awesome. For people who are listening, you guys can find him on Facebook, DBass, pretty easy to find. You can also go to FB Ads Checklist, which stands for Facebook Ads Checklist, for a kind of a high-level checklist that actually spells out some of the common mistakes people make in targeting. It's primarily around targeting, and it's at least do this if you're targeting checklist.
Remember not to
at the very least. But at the end of the day, I would encourage people that if you're not a media buyer, if you're not a data scientist, if you're not a analytical type, partner with somebody who is. Find somebody who is, and you can use your right brain and leverage their left, or vice versa. If you're more analytical and you find yourself loving this piece of Facebook, I love the data, and I love analyzing data, and I love this left brain centric part of Facebook, then partner with someone who's creative and likes copy and coming up with images and all this. So, and that will help you. Dave, this has been fantastic. I could actually go several hours talking about this because we didn't even get to all the mistakes that people are making and all the things they can do as a follow-up. But you've given people a lot to think about and how serious they should be taking the audience and the interest targeting and all these different pieces and elements, and not just and not take it lightly, to take it seriously. And if you're an agency or digital agency owner, this shows you that there's a lot that goes into it. Dave's got years and years of experience. He's managing, as you heard, hundreds of thousands of dollars in ad spend every single month for his clients. Lastly, Dave, before we part real quick, how do you find clients? Or what advice would you get for people who say, I'm still trying to find clients because I'm an agency owner or I'm a boutique agency? Just as a last tip before we spin out here, because we've gone way over.
So my humorous response would be, hopefully you also have a generous fairy godmother somewhere in the universe that's looking out for you. Because sometimes it feels that way, where I've been on the edge of, kind of having issues, and then, relying on one client, and then something kind of fell through, lost all the ad accounts, and I thought I was making plenty of money, so I didn't really care. And next thing you know, I'm, I lost 80% of my fee, and now I, down to 1 or 2 clients. I'm like, oh Jesus, and then out of nowhere, some kind of opportunity shows up and saves my ass. So part of it is, being open to kind of opportunities and capitalizing on them when you see them. So that I'll throw that out there, right? That's critical. If you're not kind of open and aware, you hear, kind of colleagues talking and they mention Facebook, like, hey, like gently kind of, just being open and aware of situations. 2, once you start having clients, especially during the good times, things are working, they're making lots of money. Hey, if you have any other businesses that you're aware of, that you think could use, similar support to what you're getting, I would love the referral, right? So trying to leverage kind of the successes you do have to piggyback and kind of find more.
Great.
Yeah, and that's for me how it's worked, and that's caused some stress. I'm not saying it's always the best, not having a business development person on your team, not having a website that markets your stuff. But that's how it's kind of worked out, and it's taken some years to really build up that solid foundation of clients. But once you do, it's a really solid foundation because it's built purely, you didn't trick anyone, you didn't convince anyone, like everyone was referred kind of that you have. And there was already this immediate kind of trust in the beginning because they knew somebody that had good results with you.
Well, so I'll add in the last piece of this. I think it all ties together is that Dave has shown that he's really good at not Facebook advertising as a whole, because he's not going to sit here and say I'm the best at copy and creative, but I'm really good at the Facebook advertising meat and potatoes part of it, which is the most important piece. At the traffic piece, right? And because he's that good at the traffic, and he's honed that skill, and like you've immersed. I tell people, immerse yourself in what you're good at, and people then, it becomes easier for you to tell people exactly what you're good at, because you'll hold your stake in the ground and say, I'm great at traffic, and have a hard time finding someone better than me. And 2, you've made it clear what you're not. So that sends a very clear message to somebody who can decide whether or not they need you, as well as makes it easier for people to refer you. So by me, really honing in, I asked you when we first met, tell me about who your ideal client is. And I knew from talking to you when we first met what your superpowers were. Now it makes it easy for me to think about who might be able to use your services. So if you make it easy on people to refer you, you're more likely to get referrals. That's the end lesson. Dave, thanks for being on here. I can't wait to have you on again sometime. And I might have you talk to my private groups of people who have bought my courses specifically about Facebook ads in the future. And then maybe if we ever get back to where we can go to events in person, I'll even fly you in and have you talk to our group. Until then, God bless. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for being on the show.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I hope people learned something. If they have a way to contact you with questions, just shoot them to you and you can get them to me. And
I'll make sure you get into Dave's hands. So send me any questions you have, or if you want Dave to help you or collaborate or partner with you, reach out to me. If you don't know how to reach out to me, I'll give everyone a way. You can text me. You can text me at 571-639-4584. And just text me, and I'll respond to you directly, and I'll make sure you get put in contact with Dave as well. And you can also find him on Facebook. With that said, thanks for not being average, Dave. And I challenge everyone listening to not be average as well. Go get it. Happy holidays.
Have fun, everybody.
Tune in next week for the Not Your Average Joe Show with international business mentor Joe Soto.